start a session like this with meditation first, because it actually changes the perspective from which we listen. And so I feel if we can hold this perspective or this consciousness that it is I, the soul, am listening through these physical ears and through these physical organs, then actually something deeper will possibly touch you. We can hear more. And this topic of letting go, I feel, is one that is probably very close to me. I feel it's a journey that we can start at any time. And it's something that we learn maybe when we begin a spiritual journey. Before then, it's words, I feel. And those words don't really create a significance of what it truly means to let go. And I think in the world today, when we don't necessarily follow a spiritual path, it's very easy to say, let the past be the past. I think we've all used this term, just saying, forget the past. It's easy to forget. Well, it may be easy to forget the past, but until we've done some level of inner work and owned our past and allowed the past or made peace with the past, I don't think it's easy to let go of the past. In fact, it isn't easy to let go of the past. And I feel this spiritual law, and it is a law, where we can recognize this, let the past be the past, and really understand the depth of this one law of allowing the past to be the past. And I feel it's very connected to this other law, which is do not take sorrow and do not give sorrow. If there was one law that's at the top of any spiritual book, it's don't take sorrow, but don't give sorrow. And it's amazing how, as we've been conditioned in this world, and not just in this world, but in previous births as well, we have given sorrow to many people, I'm sure, but we've taken a lot of sorrow. And it's an interesting thing to just think about, is how much sorrow do I take? And what does it actually mean to take sorrow? And it's funny, I think when we understand what it means to take sorrow, we can completely change our relationship with ourselves and everything we're interacting with. And I remember Daddy Yankee once shared that to take sorrow is simply to allow my feelings to be broken. And we started today's meditation with a feeling of peace and calmness. And it was very easy for us to be in this state of peace and calmness when we're disconnected from our physical body, when we're so present and we're so here in this moment, in this now. And it begins to show us that actually this is how we should really be as human beings, completely present in this moment, without any pull into our past, without any pull into the future, and fully absorbed in this present moment. And we use this term observation. And when we're fully in this moment, right here, right now, we can observe things very clearly. Not as they should be, or as we want them to be, or as somebody else wants them to be, but exactly as it is. And when we observe things, it's almost like we can see them in a TV. They're happening, there's a little scene taking place, but it isn't affecting me. And also, by it not affecting me, it's not changing the way I feel about myself. And I feel this is the key, because when we grow up, we are exposed to so many things, so many different scenes. If we look at our life as a movie, you go to the cinema, there's a movie reel, right? And the reel is made up of many different scenes. And each scene we will have given something to and taken something from, whether that's happiness, whether that's suffering. And these scenes, we can move through life. But we often take the baggage of all of these themes with us in the form of what we've experienced. And that then defines how we begin to interact with life. So a simple example being you may have been young and may have been bitten by a dog. That's a simple example that we can take. But that experience is held within our subconscious mind. And as a child, you may have experienced pain, and you may have created a belief system in your mind that says dogs are bad. Or you may have created a belief system because nobody came and helped you, I am not worthy of being helped. And this isn't a conscious thought you create when you're young, because at that time we just process things at a very emotional level. But actually, something internally happens to us in the form of a feeling, and we begin to then think like that. So as we grow up, our mindset becomes partly based on that one particular situation. And we could have had many of those different situations. So I may grow up and I see dogs now. And when I see a dog, I instantly get scared. Yeah. And it's because of that memory. And so it's amazing how the past becomes very present and how we carry whatever has happened in the past into the present moments. And it becomes very clear for us immediately because we've experienced pain. And an interesting thing I learned about the soul when I started this journey of Raja Yoga meditation is that when impressions are created, or sanskars are created, habitual patterns are created, and what's actually stored within our memory tracks, we realize that there are two things that are stored in the memory tracks. One is the event that took place, so what actually happened. And the second thing is we begin to hold on to the feeling. And often we can forget the event, but the feeling is always caught within our subconscious memory track. It's like a groove in our subconscious. So we hold on to that. And these feelings then begin to affect us because they trigger. And little things can trigger it. So if I see something, maybe a dog, that triggers that memory. All of a sudden, I feel whatever I felt when I was young. I don't know where it's coming from. I may have forgotten that memory, but all of a sudden, those feelings come up. And therefore, I find myself feeling fearful, vulnerable, maybe not able to accept anybody's help, maybe because all of those things that I haven't fully processed, but I'd absorbed as a young child, are still held inside of me. And so learning to make peace with our past is a really important thing, because our past is filtered through what we experience in the present moment. It's almost like we put a pair of sunglasses on, and through those lenses, we filter our life through the belief systems we've accumulated, through the feelings we've accumulated, and then we begin to operate in life. And these goggles begin to taint us because if we hold on to the past in a negative way, they don't allow us to trust ourselves. They don't allow us to change our thought patterns. They don't allow us to progress in life. And we may also find that history tends to repeat itself. I don't know about you, but I know from my own experience, there are certain habitual traits that I accumulated from my past that I just felt were constantly repeating, but were actually linked to a memory. And I remember there was a memory once when I felt very powerless, overwhelmed, and it would trigger fear inside of me because of something that had happened to me as a child. And these feelings just come up. And in order to learn to let go of the past, and I feel often we can see this very clearly in our relationships with others, very clearly in our relationships with others, where we can easily hold on to a lot about someone from their past actions and what they did, what they said, how it made us feel. And when we're not able to release ourselves away from that, we can recognize that actually holding on to that, the first person it's hurting is myself. We know that. We can experience the pain of it because we keep on thinking about it again and again and again. And we only think about it because we haven't learned to make peace with it. And so we're still asking questions about that particular event or that particular scene and that situation. And I haven't learned to let it go. And equally, I think we can see this in different parts of our life. Maybe we've had a situation in our life where we missed an opportunity. There was an opportunity in my life where I should have taken it with two hands and I haven't been able to take it. And that creates a feeling of regret, possibly. And when we have these feelings of regret internally, we keep on asking ourselves the questions, how could this have been different? Why wasn't it different? And we keep beating ourselves up about this again and again and again. And so really important to see where my thoughts are going first in the past. And also, it's important for us to recognize this connection between the past and the future. Where the past becomes present, we can't change our future because history tends to repeat itself. But when we begin to do the inner work and release ourselves from the past, we actually stop to worry about our future. Because in releasing the past, we become more and more who we are meant to be in the present. And I feel in my journey of letting stuff go in my life, gradually over the years, I found myself becoming more and more present. I haven't had to practice presence, I just feel present. And I know that if something is pulling me back into the past, or if I'm creating worries or fear about the future, then there's something related to my past that I need to let go of. And this is interesting because sometimes we don't realize where our thoughts are going and how much time we spend in the past and how much time we spend in the future and how little we actually spend in the present moment. And we can think meditation is a good opportunity for us to just be released from the thoughts that we're having in those two time zones so that we can be still and be free. And meditation allows that for sure. But until I'm able to sit and face my past, I can't make peace with it. So there's two things to, I think, the kind of the blurb that Umang was sharing earlier, which is we have to let be first before we can let go. And to let be means I have to face my past. And often people ask me, well, where do I start? There's so much that I've been going through in my life. How do I let go of my past? And the first thing I often say is focus on where your emotional pain is right now. Because if I can pay attention to my emotions in this moment, they will guide me to what aspect of my past I need to let go of. And often we've become so shut down from our emotions that we don't actually know how we feel. And I know this coming from an Indian-bodied family where, it's not normal to talk about the way you feel. You've been brought up in this way where, the rules of society and the conditioning of society dictates how we behave and interact with others. So we almost put ourselves last, if anything. And we ignore anything we've experienced in the past. We almost shut the door to it. We don't want to go anywhere near that. But in doing so, we end up rejecting ourselves even more. And also, I feel that as these these different situations have affected us, they've actually created little knots in our heart, and they accumulate burden or heaviness. So when negative situations gradually kind of the soul experiences more and more negative situations through the journey of life, but hasn't been able to let go of anything, we have just brought our entire collection with us. So we come with baggage. I remember when I went to India for the first time, when I went with my family, there was about 13 of us and there was about 15 suitcases. So there was a lot of baggage we had to carry. And it's heavy, when we carry emotional baggage from childhood, from our past lives, the heaviness accumulates. And where there is heaviness, there is no ability to be light. There's no ability to be happy, because I'm carrying so much emotional weight inside of me. And sometimes we don't necessarily see the signs of this. I think it's, we can carry things for years without realizing the weight of what we're carrying. And it often comes in the disconnection between the mind and the heart. So we become much more mind focused, and we don't look after the heart. I'm pointing here, but I mean the heart of the soul. And so the mind and the heart are disconnected. And some of the signs of this will be, I may experience a lot of confusion in life. I may find myself not being able to make decisions easily. I may find myself becoming overly emotional or overly sensitive to situations. And these are very subtle signs that actually there is a blockage internally, and a blockage that I need to deal with, I need to face, I need to make peace with. And sometimes when we keep living our life pretending like that blockage isn't there, we are only surviving life, because we're not living happily at all. We're just dealing with it however we can, because the heaviness, when we experience internal heaviness, that heaviness affects our thoughts. It affects the way we feel about ourselves, and ultimately we carry it on our faces. So the sign of heaviness is just when we look at ourselves in the mirror and look into our eyes, and we can see all the heaviness that we're carrying. And often we don't realize that when situations come in front of us to test us, they're just triggering all of our old stuff. And when the old stuff comes up, we don't focus on the old stuff, but actually we begin to blame the external situation. And this is how the ego works. This is how we've been conditioned in life to deal with situations, is when something happens to me, I turn outwards to blame, rather than seeing what is happening on the outside as a trigger. Nothing more than a trigger. It's just simply prodded me. Just like a dog comes near me, it's triggered this memory. It's got nothing to do with the dog. It's got everything to do with what I experienced when I was a child that I haven't been able to let go of, and how that changed the way I felt about myself. So we can all experience different situations in our life. But when a situation changes the way I feel about myself, that's when it's done the work. That's when it's done the damage. And we don't realize how different situations and negative situations have impacted us in our life in this way and changed the way we feel about ourselves. Yeah. And when it changes the way we feel about ourselves, we can start creating thoughts in our minds like, I am not worthy of anybody's love. I may reject myself. I may be hard on myself. You may be saying things like, you are a total failure. Yeah, because this is how the past begins to work on us. And so in order to really see my past, I need to see the quality of the thoughts that I'm having in this moment, and what the triggers are, what is triggering me at this moment. And that often takes just a bit of introspection. And I like this word introspection because introspection is two words. One is it's being introverted, and the second word is inspection, looking within. And when we're in this space of just looking within from an introverted perspective, so we spend time with ourselves, then actually we can begin to set ourselves free. And I know in the work we've done, I've worked with young people predominantly, but also different groups who've come for retreats at the Lighthouse Retreat Center. And we've taken them through a retreat process where they've been able to let go of situations in their life. And I remember this one particular scene at the Global Retreat Center where there was a young group of souls that came to the retreat center. And I often used to sit outside the retreat center on the Friday evening to welcome them, but also just to see what heaviness people were carrying. It becomes very easy to see what people are carrying. And when we take them through this process, we have to take them through it really gently and carefully and with a lot of love. Because often we can't see ourselves truthfully. And that's the biggest challenge with letting things be. We can't see it clearly or truthfully. Because honesty requires the ego just to dissolve. And when the ego is up, and what I mean by the ego, I mean our consciousness is still taking pain from what has happened. Where there is pain, there is ego. And when I'm experiencing pain, so we've all heard this expression, my ego's been hurt, right? Or my ego has hurt me, essentially. But when that pain is present, then I can't see myself clearly. So I can give you a simple example. If someone has been hurtful, maybe they've said something nasty to you, maybe they've been angry towards you, you experience emotions, no? You may experience emotions that you don't fully understand. And whilst you're experiencing these emotions, you're trying to think, why did this person say it? But actually, the emotions of pain that you've taken in that situation, you will start now thinking negative thoughts as a result of it. And it's because someone shouted at you, you felt pain, you felt that emotion running across your body, and you will start to think, why did they say that? What right did they have to say that? This is what I'm going to say to them tomorrow. So we begin to start to project feelings of anger towards them because we've accepted pain. So when we've accepted pain, that's how the mind begins to work. It creates a flood of waste thoughts that doesn't allow us to let situations be, because we'll still be asking questions. And a good sign that I can't accept the situation, A, is I can't let it go. B is I will constantly ask questions. Why? Why did this happen? Why did they say this? What right did they have? And you just won't let it go. So mentally, you will find yourself thinking about that situation again and again and again. And in doing so, you will find yourself being drained energetically. You will get yourself more and more tired, because what is happening here is you're suffering from the anger that you're creating. And therefore, we think we're analyzing the situation, but we're not analyzing it. Actually, we're just creating more and more anger towards it. And that then builds up inside of us, and we hold on to that anger. And I think we've all been in situations, I know I have, where it's easy for us to take hurt from somebody in this way. And they stay in our minds. We can't let them go. And internally, we'll be brewing. We may be quieter, but internally, there's a volcano taking place. And it's all in my awareness, all in my awareness. And in that moment, wherever you're going, whether you're driving your car, whether you're in your mum's house, whether with your family, you are not present any longer. You are reliving that situation, but not just that, you are projecting what you want to do to this other person as well. You probably, maybe you can recognize what I'm saying. because you've probably had this in your life. But that's the way it works when we're affected by a situation. And so if a situation triggers any sort of emotional pain inside of us, then it can be felt at the level of the heart. We're suffering, right? And that's a form of pain. That's me taking suffering from a situation. Yeah. So when I was explaining what does it mean to take sorrow, when I feel that pang of emotion across my body, I've allowed my feelings to be broken. That means that situation has influenced me and that it has affected me. And I may not have said anything at that point, but internally, I'm saying a lot of things, a lot of things. And then what happens is, because it's going on in my awareness constantly, it's now beginning to shape my attitude. Yeah. An attitude is thoughts and feelings, vibrations. When we talk about attitude, we mean vibrations. So when you're carrying thoughts and emotions and feelings of anger towards somebody, then you'll be vibrating them. And you may be quiet, but you will be vibrating them to the other person. Yeah. And the power of vibration is very, very strong. You know, we can pick up on people's vibration very clearly. They can reach us within a second from very far. Because the power of thought tends to go quicker than even the speed of light. You can know, maybe some of you have had the experience where before the phone rings, you know who is about to call you. And you kind of think, wow, you pick up the phone and you're thinking, oh, I was just thinking of you. Anyone had that experience? Well, if you've had, then that's a sign that you're able to catch or you've caught somebody's thought. And this is how humans can actually communicate with each other, and our natural ability to be intuitive, to pick up on these subtle signals of thought that we've lost because we've kept our minds so busy that we can't listen to them anymore. But this is how vibrations work. They reach another person. And you may also have experienced a situation where maybe you're having a really good day and you've had an argument with somebody a few days ago, but all of a sudden, as you're having a good day, and then suddenly they start coming into your head and they start running around in your head. Has anybody had that experience? If you had, just say yes on the chat. It'd be interesting to see how many of you have had that experience. Okay, so a few of you have had that experience. Interesting. Yeah, and you kind of think, well, where did they come from? You know, I was having a really good day here, and all of a sudden they're now in my head. They're running around, yeah, and you're reliving whatever issues you've got with them. And what's actually happening there is they're thinking about you. And this is how we do communicate in attitude, in our vibrations, because our attitude towards them is constant. Yeah, whether they're present or not present in front of you, your attitude is set towards them. So I'm emitting. As soon as my attitude is set, I'm emitting vibrations towards them. And as soon as you meet them, what are you going to be emitting? Firstly, what's going to come up in your mind? Well, the first thing that's going to come up when you see them is what they did to you last, what they said to you. Second, obviously, your attitude, your vibration. And our attitude is reflected usually in how we sit sometimes. You know, maybe we sit in front of them, folding our arms. Maybe we sit cross-legged, you know, trying in a more defensive position. Maybe we can't give them eye contact, but our body position completely adopts the internal attitude of the soul. So if you don't like somebody, your body will automatically position itself to show the other person that you don't like them. Now, they may not necessarily pick up on that, but at a vibrational level, they will. Yeah, at a subconscious level, we're still emitting messages. And so the interesting thing about my attitude is once it's loaded with the vibrations of something negative, it is nearly impossible to change it, because that will create the momentum in terms of your actions. So once your attitude is loaded full of negative waste thoughts, revengeful thinking, hostility, then as soon as you open your mouth, you may say the right thing, but your tone will carry it in the wrong way. And I think most of us have had this experience where we may have even heard in our lives, it's not what you said, it's the way you said it. Has anybody had that in their life? Has someone said that to them? It's not what you said, it's the way you said it. Yes. Because my attitude and my intentions are connected. And this is an interesting thing to look at, because when I keep holding on to the past in this way, we don't necessarily, most people will not hear the words. They will catch the feeling behind the words. And our attitude will often carry that loaded feeling. So if I've experienced hurt because somebody has been angry towards me, then my hurt will be the seed, will be the starting point from which my attitude is created. If I don't deal with my hurt is only creating anger internally. So firstly, it's hurting me, it's poisoning my thoughts, depleting me of energy. But secondly, as soon as I open my mouth towards this other person, I will say things I didn't really mean, or maybe I will mean them in that moment, but I will probably end up regretting. And what then happens is I begin to create what we call as a karmic account with this individual, where on the basis of me taking sorrow, I'm now giving sorrow. And so I think when we look at our relationships and the quality of our relationships, we can really begin to see where it is I'm taking sorrow in a particular relationship and how it is I'm actually giving sorrow in a particular relationship. And just because I'm not saying anything does not necessarily mean I'm not giving sorrow. Because often, 80%, if not 90% of what we say is vibrational. And actually, subtle attitude plays a big part in how we interact with people that we end up rejecting. Because if somebody's hurt us, we will end up disliking them. And when I dislike somebody, I will be creating anger towards them because they've hurt me. I will be angry, and then I'll be directing my anger towards them. And in doing so, I may not necessarily say any words, but I will, in that anger, I will be rejecting them in some way. I may be avoiding them. I may ignore what they say. I may dismiss them in front of them. I may find myself being hard on them. If they say the smallest thing, I'll lash out at them. I may disrespect them in some way. I may hold a grudge against them. So there's so many ways in which we can direct our subtle attitude of anger towards somebody simply because we haven't been able to make peace with where we've taken pain in a particular situation. And so learning to let go for me starts with really seeing where I've taken sorrow within the soul and finding the space to forgive myself. And that's the biggest work we need to do as beings trying to awaken. Because if I can develop a relationship with myself where I can be kind enough to myself to listen to where I've taken suffering and pain in my life, then I can begin to release it. Firstly, accept it. It is what it is. I can't change it. But actually then learn lessons from it as well. And I feel this work is not something you can do on your own. I remember for many years when I was a young child, my mum had placed a blessing on my bed. And I never paid attention to this blessing. It was a short card. It was a little card, really lovely card, and she stuck it, but I never even read it. I didn't want to go anywhere near it. And when I eventually read it, it was a few years later, it said, "Give all your burdens to God and you will be free." And I feel this is probably the biggest effort that I've made on my spiritual journey, is learning to communicate my feelings to the divine and to really be free from my past as a result of it. And I think this is the work of healing. This is the work of becoming closer and closer to who we truly are, is when we let go of all of the muck and all of the past events that we are holding in our hearts that have created bitterness, that have created resentment, that have created deep feelings of sadness in ourselves. Because when these deep feelings exist in the heart, there is uncleanliness, you know, and it's almost like our hearts need a little broom. We need to clean all of this stuff out so that we can experience our natural loving nature again. Because we don't experience our natural loving nature because we've just got this layers and layers of experiences, of negative experiences that surround us. And you'll be surprised how quickly you can achieve this. It's not something that takes a huge amount of effort, but it does require honesty. And it does require a certain way of looking at my past. And this is not work that you can just start, pick up and start analyzing my past. No, it doesn't work that way. Firstly, we have to build a relationship with ourselves. And that relationship will come when I meditate, when I accumulate strength. Umang, I'm really sorry, I'm just going over time, but I'll probably spend the next 5 minutes just to wrap up, and then we can have questions.
Oh, that's perfectly fine.
Brilliant. So just wanted to maybe share a little bit more about what we can do. And sometimes we don't realize that when situations outside are triggering my past, we focus completely, we become laser focused on that which is triggering us, which is completely the wrong thing to do. Instead, if we just turn our attention internally, we can start the journey. One of the things that I always say to anyone is if something is triggering you and you haven't got the strength to deal with it, create distance between you and the trigger. Find a way to create distance between you and the trigger. Because until that trigger, if that inflammation in your body is constantly present, you can't heal it. Yeah, we have to take certain medication to release ourselves from that inflammation. And in this case, meditation is that medication where the inflammation slowly diminishes at first. And when we begin to feel calm and begin to feel much more centered in who we are, then we can begin to see the good in ourselves. Because when situations take place in our lives that change the way we feel about ourselves, we can't see anything good in ourselves. We have to begin that relationship of seeing the good in ourselves. And when I was sharing about this retreat, the first step is always love. Because where there is love, ego begins to melt. And when the ego begins to melt, actually what happens is I will allow myself to be vulnerable. And this is what I see in the groups that we begin to serve, where when we let go, when we actually start the process, we can't hit the situations, we can't focus on the situations. We have to give ourselves so much kindness, so much space. So that first experience we give the group when they come to the retreat center is one of total acceptance and complete love. So they feel at home. They feel like cared for. And when they feel that way, then actually their guard comes down and they can be more honest. When the guard comes down, you can see. Yeah, there's no, when we put on a mask, you can't see behind that mask. But when that mask comes out, you can see clearly. And that's when we can begin to do the inner work of healing and letting go and using this connection with the divine to really upload all of our life story. And I'll tell you one more story before we end for questions and answers. And that is when I first came back to the Brahma Kumaris, and I say back because I was raised in this way of life. I hadn't chosen it myself. Well, I probably had in my previous birth, but I hadn't made that conscious choice when I was a baby. That I eventually drifted away to experience life for myself. But when I came back and did the course, at the end of the course, the Raja Yoga course, and I had an amazing experience when I listened to the Raja Yoga course and had wonderful meditations. But the sister said to me, she said, now you need to write your life story. And that really amazed me. I sat there thinking, well, what do I write about? And what is this about? And she said, if you think about this opportunity to start life again, what is it that you want to bring closure to? in your old life. And that was incredible. I didn't know. And she said, you don't have to think too much, just write, but write to the divine. And that was when my journey of writing started, because I wrote 7 pages. And not only did I write 7 pages, but I found I had tears coming out. I didn't even know where all of this stuff was coming. It just like the pen flowed and it flowed. I wasn't writing from up here. I was writing from here. And as I wrote, I just felt more and more light and light. And it's almost like there was such a huge release of memories, of situations that I'd let go of, that I felt free. I felt like life had started again. Because when we release the heaviness of the old, 2 things happens. One is we experience the lightness and happiness of effectively a new perspective to life, freshness, but actually you begin to invite newness into your life. And that's what I also found. I found that my life took different directions. I found my career progressed as a result of that, because new energy I created space for new energy in my life simply by shifting old energy. And that's the law of energy. We can't attract anything new when we're still holding on to that which is old. So the starting point has to be relationship with myself. The second connection is owning my emotions and feelings. The third is starting a relationship in meditation with myself and really consistent practice. And then the fourth is writing. Pick up a journal and journal about your feelings. And I tell you what, once you start journaling about your feelings, you will get to know yourself, you will get to accept yourself, and you will begin to develop a strong relationship with yourself. So I'll leave it there for now, because this topic is so big, but I hope it's given you some food for thought. If you've got any questions, then probably now is a good time to take a few questions.
I think I've received a couple of questions. One is, let me just read out. Are there sanskars of personality? Are there any sanskars of personalities which we might pick up from our hereditary, maybe from our lineage, from our parents? So
Yes.
what's the process to clean those sanskars?
Yeah. So often we don't realize, but we've been conditioned in life, and those sanskars are formed in very early childhood. And often they relate to, how I see myself fit into this world, and how I have to follow the norms of society to be accepted by people. So again, it's all outside in. We've been told to behave in a certain way so that we can feel loved and respected by others. So all of the rules and conditionings that we've been taught in life actually are completely reverse. They all operate from outside in. If you do something on the outside, then actually you will feel good on the inside. Yeah. And in order to change that, really simple. I first just have to start developing a relationship with myself on the inside. And the more I can do that with meditation and quiet and create the space in my life, the more I can begin to see how my conditioning is affecting me. And this is the key thing, is we can't see our own conditioning and can't see how we've been affected by our past. One example is, I know somebody who, has never experienced love from his mum and dad in his life. Right from early childhood, he was sent to a boarding school in India. And he was, within that, he was thrust the responsibility to look after all of his siblings, his brothers. So at a young age, he'd always known responsibility, but never known love. And he's never been able to accept love in his life because he's never experienced that love. And that conditioning is deep, so sometimes we have to understand what's blocking my capacity to experience love. And often it will be our conditioning. But when we experience pain from it, that's when we will find the root of it. So the starting point always is, what is creating pain in my life in the moment? Because that will then guide me to my sanskar, and that will then guide me to the memory. But I haven't got to do this work on my own. The work is, I have to be honest about the way I feel, and then I upload to the divine. And when I do that with an honest heart, then I will be guided in life to see what it is I need to let go of. And I feel this is a subtle but very deep secret to letting go. Sometimes it's easy for us to see, but other times, particularly when it's related to the distant past, it's not so easy for us to see.
Okay, thank you. There's a question which says, I have difficulty to find contentment and always seeking something in my life to get satisfaction. How to deal with it?
Yeah, that's a really, it's a good point. Again, when we think about our relationship with ourselves, when we're not contented on the inside, then it's natural for us to take our contentment from the outside in the form of whatever we need to distract ourselves with, whether it's the company of others, whether it's, going on holiday, all of these things, whether it's, spending time doing other things, but anything but spending time with myself. And so contentment starts with firstly developing a relationship with myself. Until I get to know myself, I can't like myself. And until I like myself, I can't be happy with myself. And so I feel that can really teach us that I have to first understand, because as human beings, we can't accept anything we don't understand. And so if I understand myself, I can accept myself. If I can accept myself as I am, then I can like myself. I will like myself exactly how I am. And when I like myself exactly how I am, that is my defects and my strengths, then there's a balanced view here. And that way I can begin to see others and accept them for who they are. But often when we look at others and we can't accept them for who they are, it's only because we can't accept ourselves for who we are. And therefore there cannot be contentment. So contentment for me is connected to happiness, which means I need to like myself first. I need to develop this relationship. And meditation is definitely, particularly the early morning meditation. This is very useful to develop a relationship with myself. So the moment your eyes open, begin by saying, some nice things to yourself. Often we wake up and we just turn on the TV and we turn to our mobile phones and social media. But actually the first words we say set the tone of how we feel about ourselves. So if we speak to ourselves in a positive and uplifting way when we wake up, and I often give this exercise and it's changed people's lives, just to say 3 things, 3 affirmations to myself that may feel very alien to you, but until we break the cycle of not feeling good about ourselves by injecting positive thoughts about ourselves, we can't change. And then meditation allows me to experience who I am and start my day in the morning that way. A bit of a long-winded explanation to your answer, but I feel the essence is there as well.
Okay, I think there are a couple of questions. I think you mentioned a 4-step process. I think if you could refresh or remind us of the 4 actions.
So when I'm trying to let go of something in my past and something is affecting me, the first thing I need to do is spend time appreciating myself. Yeah. And that's the first thing I have to do. I can't go into the problem. And our human instinct, our ego instinct, is to go into the problem. So become laser focused on the problem and who's triggering it. And that is the wrong thing to do, because that will only leave us more and more depleted, because our consciousness has dropped. As soon as we're affected, our consciousness has dropped. And whatever's triggering it is also at this same level of consciousness. And therefore the two will clash. And this famous quote, no problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness that it was created. And so those two will always clash. So in order for us to change, we need to elevate our consciousness by seeing the positive and the loving aspects about myself. Because until we begin to value ourselves again, I can't see myself in a balanced way. I will only ever see the poison inside of me. I will only ever see how that situation has ruined everything about me. Because as soon as that negativity enters me in the form of anger, it destroys all positivity. And so I have to raise my consciousness, become more balanced, and therefore more objective. And objective means to see things in a more balanced way. You know, we see things dispassionately without that emotion. We can see the good, in what it's trying to teach us, but we can also see the negative in terms of what the triggers were and what it's beginning to unearth inside of us. So I hope that begins to help. So the first starting point is always love. The second starting point after that is honest reflection. Questions I have to ask myself. What are the emotions that I've experienced? And acknowledge them. You know, when I acknowledge my emotions, that's when I can really begin to think, you know what, I'm feeling this, and acknowledge that this is the way I feel. Until we do that, nothing changes. And then we can let go of those emotions to the divine. And I often use writing as a process for this, and just write about your emotions, not about your thoughts. And if you just did those three things with meditation every single day, I often wrote in the evenings, and I'd only ask myself one question: what bothered me? What out of today bothered me or created feelings of negativity internally? And I would write. And I found that deeply therapeutic because it allowed me to get to know myself, and it allowed me to recognize my triggers, allowed me to see the root causes of that as well. But writing and honesty is the way to developing a relationship with the self.
That's a very, very useful tip, I think. I like that question. What bothered me today? It's a very powerful question to ask yourself. What bothered me today? Just got a couple of more questions. On the sanskars, which you talked about, changing sanskars. If I pick up some sanskars or personalities from my family or from my parents, how do I change that? Is that the same process, or is it a different process?
Absolutely. You can identify the sanskar, but until you identify the pain that sanskar is treating you, that's the way forward. So the pain is first, and then the sanskar is second. Sometimes we don't recognize. So to release ourselves from that sanskar or that conditioning, I just have to understand it. I have to understand what is that sanskar at the moment, and what is my condition, how is my conditioning working, and then change it by simply creating a new sanskar. So creating a sanskar that's more elevating. So I may have a sanskar of talking to myself in a harsh way, because maybe that's what I've experienced in life. You know, maybe I've had my parents talk down at me and being hard on me, and therefore my negative self-talk has been all about me being hard on myself, rejecting myself. And so in order to change that, I have to start to talk to myself in an uplifting way and learn how to do that, to create positive sanskars. And often we forget that we are positive beings. And our biggest asset is our ability to think positively and talk to ourselves in a nice, uplifting, and kind way. If we just do that alone, you will be able to transform sanskars, because often our sanskars will come in the form of our thoughts and will begin to operate internally, just like normal circuits, you know, like a normal operating system. But we have to break that by beginning to start to talk to ourselves in a nice way. And that's the one question I would probably leave you all with, is how much do I talk to myself in an uplifting, positive, honest way? And if I find myself saying very little, then that's a sign that I don't have a relationship with myself, and I need to develop this relationship with myself. And Raja Yoga shows us the path to not only create that relationship with myself, but then to create this relationship with the divine, so that I feel the loving support of an unconditional Father who has the best interest in me. And that will uplift me, because without that, I will never be able to change. I need to feel that somebody's got my back, somebody understands me, and somebody can help me change and uplift my consciousness. So I hope that just answers that question.
No, I think I've got a message also. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Ash. I think lots of feedback. I think people have really enjoyed your talk. So thank you so much, as always. Thanks for your time. It's a very, very deep subject, and even I've personally taken lots of tips from your sharing.
Sure. No, thank you for having me, and it's really lovely that I've been able to share on this topic, because it's a topic that's really close to my heart. So thank you for having me.